What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, and you're here for another episode of the Facts Project. Today, we have two very special guests, Kelly LaCroix, and Sean Murphy from Ominous Powers in Comics. We are here to talk about Everyday Magus. Thank you for being here, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, James.
Absolutely. So, briefly, now I got a chance to, of course, read the summary for this for the Kickstarter, and I gotta say, the intricacy and all of the mystical beings and the character development in which you chose and how you put this story together just made it seem like it was very worthwhile for me to watch and definitely wanted to read. So how did this come about, this storyline? Because it seems like it was something, because of how everything is so encompassed in intricacy and detail, it seemed like it took a long time to happen.
Yeah. So originally, what we were doing when we first decided that we wanted to write comics, we wrote a 12-issue series that I started getting nervous, basically, thinking like, we're complete unknowns. We don't want to be sending this out as a pitch. Like it just seemed better to me to get a single issue out and maybe do a couple small things first and give people a feel, like a baseline of what we're about and what we're shooting for. So once we decided to do that, that's where this story came in. You're talking about how it seems like there's like kind of a lot going on, and there's a lot of layers. There was a ton of world building. That is because those original 12 issues of our other series, this character is a minor character in the larger series. So we had already worked out the mechanics of this larger universe, determined like characters, what sort of rules there were, and then kind of spun that off and tried to apply some new rules to this one shot here. Anything I'm missing there, Sean?
Well, I mean, it exploded the universe, right? The universe was already pretty big at the end of that 12-issue run, which at the time we named Bitterroot. And then I remember being in when we were working on that final issue, and that's when they announced that they were greenlighting Bitterroot by David F. Walker and Chuck Brown. And I was like,
just missed,
But then that spurred on the conversation of like, well, we're not known names, nobody knows us, we can't just throw pitches out, it'll just go right into the fire. Let's build a body of work. And then, like Kelly said, we just chose a character and built a sort of a biography around them that expanded from what the biography we'd originally written. And that it exploded the universe. It's so much bigger. It's so much more multifaceted, so much more diverse. We can, accommodate any genre that the media can handle now, because, if you look at Everyday Magus, it's got it all. I mean, gods, monsters, aliens, demons, doesn't matter. You're crossing that cosmic threshold, and now everything that you expected is much weirder because it's much more familiar and much more mundane.
Very true. Now, as far as like the first bit of connectivity, you talk about in the summary about a connection to a previous project that you had called the Wolfminder.
Yeah. The Wolfminder, we got a notice from Negative Space Comics, who we had originally sent our script for Everyday Magus to for their contest. We ended up making it to the finals. We're feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, they do writing contests.
Yeah, they do writing contests.
So for any aspiring writers out there, it's a good way to get your foot in the door, start meeting new people. And Negative Space has been a huge help to us in more ways than I could probably count for right now.
Yeah, tons of mentorship and community. Like the people we met through it are just incredible. But
please go on.
Well, they had put out a request for submissions, because they said we're going to do a short story anthology. So we sat down and decided, well, do we want to write something completely, original, or are we going to do like something from our story universe? We decided to do that, and then we took elements from Everyday Magus, and we said, well, let's apply it Kelly was thinking, I kind of want to do a story about someone who's sort of like in this weird, tucked away liminal space, and they're really kind of lonely.
Mhm.
And then it just went from there. We started drawing on like old movies that we had watched. We took some inspiration from a book called The Day Johnny Got His Gun, which is an anti-war film. It's an anti-war novel turned film, and most people know it from the Metallica music video.
Yeah, Metallica's One, for any folks who have used to watch music videos back in the
The
late
actual
80s.
music, yeah, the actual music video for One was like
It's pretty
beyond that.
intense, right?
Yeah,
It's like
pretty
10
intense.
minutes long too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
So
I noticed some of your inspirations, of course, Hunter S. Thompson's Brazil, Videodrome, 1983 Videodrome. Now I gotta ask you, because like as far as like a movie like that, James Woods, of course, what
Not a
the
nice
funny
guy.
thing is about that particular movie, it always reminded me of from X-Men, the villain from X-Men, Mojo. Like
oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah, like Mojo World.
sure.
I was like, at first I'm reading it, I was like, wow, if this is the inspiration for this, I wonder what this is definitely going to be about.
I'm a bit of a Cronenberg fan. Like or really anything weird, because I love Naked Lunch.
These references that we're pulling up, we're fairly old. We're in our 40s now. So,
I'm youthful. I'm spry.
okay, I'm old. But we grew up in the 80s, so uh, I guess that's where those references are coming from, because those are like the weird things we would see. We'd be happening to flip by late at night the way you used to be able to do, and find something crazy, and just like be totally enraptured by it on TV and be like, what is this? This is amazing. And have to do some digging to try to figure out what it was.
Mm.
It was Debbie Harry for me. I'm not gonna lie. I had a huge crush on Debbie Harry growing up, and that's
Videodrome,
what
yeah.
made Videodrome like I have to see it. Especially like like a kid who's just like was fiendishly obsessed with Blondie. Like that was an important thing for me to seek out.
Very warranted, my friend. Now if we could get into the characters, because of course anybody that has a depiction of heaven or any type of depiction of the afterlife, it's always mostly human.
Right.
This was not chosen for this storyline. You have, of course, Chalk, who is a human being from Earth, but then you have Mr. Unpronounceable, who's a satyr, and then you have was it Cyanea?
Cyanea, or Kelly call her
Cyanea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We pronounce her name differently.
Who's an alien octoped, and notes that alien octopeds are pretty much a large part of the storyline, because there's a lot of backstory on Mr. Unpronounceable and how basically he was brought here. There's also a story of an octoped safari that is brought out amongst the summary as well. Now, the midst of basically how you crafted a world building project of what the afterlife looks like, how did that get encompassed?
Well, I think it probably stemmed from the idea, but we talk about our jobs a lot.
Yeah.
Because we've both worked a lot of jobs that we've hated, and we both had really weird and crazy experiences on them. So that was the seed, I think, is that we were probably having a beer one night together and talking about these shitty jobs that we can't stand, and saying, oh, you remember this this one time I mean, what are some of the weirder things?
Well, I mean, like I almost got shot on a job. I got hit in the head and went blind in one eye. I had a burst appendix that I worked an entire week on a major television show, and I won't tell the title so I don't get sued. But my back hurt from standing on, because we were on the studio, so it's all concrete.
Right.
So long that the burst appendix, I just thought it was getting fat, and then eventually, like, ended up in the ER, and they're like, "No, your abdomen's full of pus. You're dying." There's stuff like that. Like, we had so many weird things. Like, and it was right around the time that we got that email from Image saying, "Hey, Bitterroot's been greenlit," and we were like, "Damn it, that's our title." we started talking about those jobs, and we were like, well, is there something we can do with this? Because we clearly both have like some, an axe to grind about some of this, and
Mhm.
that started us on talking about this character, because Chalk in the original 12 issues was sort of like a neutral character, but we were kind of writing him a little working class, and sort of like a magician who's sort of like blue collar, because all the white collar magicians don't have their time for him. And then we just kind of built the world out from that. And I think it's one of the best things that we've done.
Yeah, so for the listeners who aren't familiar, the idea is that when you die, you are basically forced to keep working, and that is either hell or the afterlife.
Mhm.
There is a giant capitalist mega corporation that has overtaken most of hell and is just bent on expansion. Everyday Magus is one of their holdings. So the larger company is called Ominous Powers Incorporated. The smaller company, one of many that they hold, is Everyday Magus. Everyday Magus is essentially a temp agency. And so from there, you can be leased out to work any like myriad of these weird magical jobs that we kind of had to come up with, or that we use like real life jobs and like transfer that into sort of a supernatural realm.
Yeah. And because we kept coming up with all these different jobs, somewhat based in our real life experiences, we kind of opted for a comedy heist for issue 1, because our thought was in a heist you can cover a lot more ground, because you're always going to go back to that central point where, like, the cop like holds up the folder and goes, and that's when you discovered that the Declaration of Independence was behind the Mona Lisa.
Right.
Well, now there's a story, and then it kind of gives you the mobility to jump around, and it gave us the ability to kind of do a lot of different things for this book. Like, at one point we haven't, like, what, 3 pages that are all Jack Chick style.
Oh, sure.
Like,
Yeah.
we're we're trying to make fun of Jack Chick a little bit, because he did.
It's funny because when I was reading about the portion where it was described as newly departed processing, the first thing that was brought to my mind was the handbook for the recently deceased, and then the world waiting room for Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of that waiting room and how everybody just basically looked different, and there was pretty much a processing of sorts in the afterlife, and how that was pretty much, it turned out the afterlife was pretty much just a factory where everybody worked, and they were pretty much getting supplanted in different spots. Oh, you don't want to go in that room. That room is for all the ghouls and all the souls that just couldn't be saved and whatnot like that. But to
God,
get
that
back,
is such a good connection. I've got to go watch Beetlejuice again.
It was just sitting in the unconscious, and it just came up.
I guess so. Man, you're blowing my mind right now, James.
not a problem, man. I'm happy I've done that so far. But
I have to go watch it again now.
even so, also in this story, like, you don't, even though you work for the agency, the object that Chalk is trying to find is, for, of course, where you're bringing up the dichotomy between the Great Resignation and the afterlife, is that you can get fired. There's 5 what is it, 5 replacements that you can get shuffled around, and then after that you basically end up at a place called the Big Empty, which am I considering that limbo?
Well, it's a related concept. So the idea is they OPI and Everyday Magus will tolerate 5 job reassignments, and if you can't get your shit together, then they've got to make you get your shit together. And they use a spell called the Big Empty, which basically turns you into a living limbo. So they suck the you out of you, basically, and you're left as this whole of a person.
It's really expensive to do. Like, we, in our story world, magic is an economy, because capitalism is spread to the afterlife. There's sort of a manufactured scarcity over magical power, right? And so even in OPI, they're like, we don't want to have to reassign you, because eventually that gets really expensive for us. So they try to control people using what we call the sigil of slavery, which is harvested from the ink that Cyanea produces in her species. And the backstory to which what we've alluded to is that they had been hunted to near extinction, and OPI is only able to hold on to one inmate who's an octoped, and has forced her to tattoo this binding spell into souls, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where was I going with this? Cognitive decline is already kicked in.
Sorry, man.
Where am I?
We're both in our 40s.
Where's my daughter? Wait, I don't have a daughter.
Who am I?
Also the same. I'm another person in his 40s, so I could totally understand. But it's intriguing because now you have basically you have Chalk, who's pretty much tattooed, and it's pretty much the last words of his daughter, and it's described as save me, which was him, I guess, going into the burning building, and of course not being able to save her. He dies, she dies. And you've also talked about the fact that the OPI is not a part of like child labor or anything like that. So the thing is, where are all the children?
Hopefully heaven.
So there is a heaven.
I mean, you know, I've been asked that before when we were still developing the story world by a guy I did a mentorship with, and he was like, you know, how does that work? Is there this sort of thing? Like, do you delve into like heaven and hell? And I'm like, in my mind, heaven doesn't need to contract out to some company to handle their logistics, but hell does. Hell seems like it would be overly complex, so it makes sense for OPI to be like, we're going to manage your transportation in hell.
I'm glad you asked that, because I got a segue that goes into that.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, mostly I was just thinking like it's just a.
If I can just throw one thing out. So all I'd like to say about it at this point is that Chalk's long-term goal is to see his daughter again, but that's where we've kind of left it for now. So.
What happens with that, it's going to be a surprise.
Okay. So if magic is the product that, of course, is being produced throughout this, and I guess through this entire corporation, who are the consumers?
Well, like okay, so let's pretend that you're Doctor Strange and you're tired of blowing up Woo every week, or whoever, right? You keep blowing up your sidekick, your assistant, your whoever. You need somebody who's either not from this dimension and therefore not subject to physical law the same way the rest of us are, or someone who's already dead. And OPI can provide that through Everyday Magus, right? In exchange, we only ask for a minority control of your magical business.
Okay.
And then it's sort of like the Amazonification or Walmartification of magical practice, right?
Right. Now, if the first four characters that we're basically seeing here, being it Chalk, his daughter, Mr. Unpronounceable, and Cyanea. I keep on messing up that word, her name.
Yeah, we both say it differently, so don't even worry about it.
Okay. But but overall, they're more so just pretty much the line employees in this operation. Are we then to suspect that we're going to get introduced to the owners of the company, the presidents of the company, so on and so forth? Because if this place is a temp agency and it's contracting out employees to other sectors, regardless, there's probably somebody who's funding all of this.
There is, yeah, and we have. You're not going to get much of a glimpse behind that curtain on this issue
yet.
Yeah.
But we do have some things worked out, and it plays into the larger universe and how all the mechanics work there.
But it's basically like us in real life. That's why we decided to call the company Ominous Powers Inc. is because in the story world, the characters are exploited by Ominous Powers Inc. and we're for profit, and we are exploiting our characters for profit. So therefore, it just kind of makes sense.
There's like a little meta level that we've been playing around with a lot, especially on our social media. It's pretty fun that we sort of can talk in character as the heads of this supernatural corporation. So yeah, we will eventually meet some of these folks. I think the highest level we go to in this particular issue is middle management. And so
Okay, got you.
that is being that person is the larger antagonist in the story.
But we do see a brief board meeting.
Yeah,
Brief board meeting.
I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
Not too much away. I'm hoping that there's not like almost like a man behind the curtain Wizard of Oz moment that pretty much happens here. Like the ballroom is just pretty much a setup, but we shall see. Now, as far as co-writing credits, because you both worked on this project, so the dynamic between you both when you're pretty much putting your heads together and trying to get this story to come out, is it a better ways of going about it to have, or a quicker way to write when there's two of you?
I wouldn't say it's quicker.
I mean, I feel like I probably get more done when we're banging it out together than when I'm by myself. Then again, it kind of depends. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have really great days, and then some days it's just like, we're not getting anything done.
Yeah. Some days it can be a little bit of a slog when either of us are feeling uninspired. It helps when one of us, actually, I think it helps when one of us is really inspired, and then the other one can just kind of like be the voice of reason to the other one. Those days they move pretty quick. But yeah, I don't know that they necessarily move faster. A lot of the times we kind of get stuck in what I almost think of as like a bureaucracy because we don't want to make decisions that the other one's going to disagree with. So we always like to check in with each other, like, oh, hey, I'm about to throw this up on social media, or like, hey, what do you think about this turn in the next issue? Or somebody gets an idea and like, hey, I think this mechanic would work. Do you think you think that would work out? And so I think if it were one person, you can just pivot really quickly, and with two people, a lot of the times that doesn't happen.
Right.
But that's not always detrimental though either.
Yeah, I don't think you're not getting a lack of quality. If anything, it's better that way, because at one point we'll start bouncing an idea back and forth, and sometimes we'll get really excited about something only to find out later that it's far off the mark from what we had predicted for this character. It doesn't align with them well, or it's not in their voice, or just completely contradicts something else that we were previously establishing. We don't, we want to be able to fulfill the promises a character has, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of like a big deal. Like when we see these little things, we don't want it to be just a throwaway line. If it ever reads like a throwaway line, the spoiler alert to that is that it's probably really important, and that we're going to bring it up somehow later or in another issue. Somehow it'll be satisfying. It's just not something that we want to do, is to be wasteful with our words.
Now, in your bio, you describe yourselves as Montana escapees, but how much of Montana is in these books?
In Everyday Magus, it's at the very end, which I guess could be a spoiler, but I won't go on from that. The main series, it's completely set in our hometown.
Where is that exactly?
Billings, Montana.
Oh, in Billings. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because you were in Minot, so you've heard the word.
I've definitely heard the word. Yeah.
That's an interesting way to describe it too. I've definitely heard that word. Yeah, so the one series is completely around it. Everyday Magus leads to it. Pretty much everything that we've written, though, in one way or another, has something to do with Montana.
Yeah, it's all informed by our experiences, so you have to figure a lot of it's coming from there. I think about place a lot and how that shapes people.
Yeah.
And it's very impactful, I find.
Yeah.
If you look for it.
Definitely. Now, Sean, you describe yourself as being in the film industry. Kelly, did you both work on film sets before in the past?
No, we were both very creative ever since we were kids. We've known each other since we were in third grade. And yeah, after high school, Sean did some further schooling and went and worked in film and TV. I stayed mostly in Billings, moved around a little bit, but was playing in a lot of bands. So writing music, learning how to record, stuff like that.
So each of you basically just had a creative niche, and you actually went for it. There's not a lot of people that basically they want to do music, or anybody that loves music, of course, wants to do music. Anybody that loves film and TV doesn't necessarily get that opportunity to basically like work in that field. You know, like or better yet, you know, when you are creative, you don't get that opportunity to work in that field, and you both have had that opportunity to do so.
Well, to bring it back to Montana, I think it may be in large part because we knew that there was no other way. Like being creative people, I don't want to slag the community there who is doing things. There are definitely people there who are really trying hard. But it's far different from, you know, we live in Portland, Oregon now, and it's like there's murals on every corner. There's constantly creative stuff to do just about every night of the week, probably every single night of the week, honestly. And it's just not like that in Billings. So we you know, we were creative people. We just had to do it.
Yeah, I actually kind of think that it was formative. It was foundational in our early years because we, you know, in a way, it's never spoken out loud, but in a way, everything tells you you can't do any of this, right? It's just not in the cards for you. It's not going to happen. You know, as little kids, we thought of Denver as this like magical place. It's just Denver, right? We talk about that a lot. But we had to create our own value in our own craft, and I think that really pushed us to try and write something a little bit bigger and a little bit more important. But when I think about Billings, and I think about the creative people that I met in Billings, a lot of times they were far more talented than the people I met in LA, by far. Because they had to earn it. They had more to prove.
Right.
In LA, it's so clout centric, and it's really hard. I'll spiral into a negative depression if I talk about LA too long. But it's just not the same. You know, like creative people, it's like if you're really good at visual arts, well, then yeah, you're going to go be a graphic designer. You're not necessarily going to be an artist. Whereas in Billings, there aren't a lot of great graphic design agencies. So the people that are really great at visual art end up devoting themselves more fully to art, at least in a more authentic sense. So I think that there's a lot of untapped talent in Billings. I think that if Billings believed in itself more, that you'd see just it could become an artistic center very easily. A lot of very brilliant people there.
Yeah, and there's definitely you touch on something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is sort of it goes against, I think, the American character to believe in fatalism, but there is a lot of fatalism in the Midwest and Plains states. I have found a lot of people who believe that there's not a lot of hope, and that if you try to do big things, it's kind of silly.
Yeah. Right.
And that like art is kind of a bad word. It's like, who do you think you are creating art?
It's impractical,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can't feed your family on that or anything like that.
Yeah. So yeah, if you believe in that stuff, then you sort of naturally have an adversarial relationship with your surroundings. And I think, to various degrees, we both have. But yeah, like Sean says, that can be really formative. That can really help.
Yeah.
It gives you a little bit of fire.
That's true.
Yeah,
it's true. Hey, it's a testament to the story. I'll say that. But as far as the story goes, you've already brought up the fact that there's already a bit of connectivity, of course, with Chalk in this story, whether it's going from Wolfminder to Everyday Magus. How big can this story get?
There's no limit.
We've constructed, I think, a universe. I mean, there's still a lot to explore, obviously. I don't want to say like we've got it all planned out. It's not quite like that. But we've got some major mechanics out that are really fun to play with, that lead to, I think, just like sort of wide open possibilities. And we can just keep going with the things we're interested in, working in a bunch of different genres if we want to.
Yeah, I firmly believe that the ominous verse is capable of holding any genre, anything that the medium can do. The ominous verse can accommodate and can expand on, because these mechanics are something that we've been spending years working on. Like this has been a big project for a long time, and I think, you know, starting out with that first 12 issue series and like laying down the groundwork where we were really tapping growing up in a small town and like trying to indict some of the not great belief systems that we internalized unknowingly as kids and wanted to work out on paper. Yeah, I think that gave us somewhere to go. And when we decided to do Everyday Magus, it was, you know, the universe revealed itself to be that big as we want it to be.
Right. It's been 6 years of actually working on stories in this universe. And this is kind of the opening shot of it. And we plan to well, Sean's I should back up. So we've got, this is our opening shot. We've got the Negative Space anthology story coming out soon, I believe within the next couple months. We've got that 12 issue series that's just hanging out on the back burner. Sean is working on a horror story. I'm working on a horror story. And then we're both constantly, you know, as writers do, you've got, you know, a couple things on the side that you think, oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe jot out an outline and then just kind of put it on the side for a while.
We've been sketching out ideas for series for some of the other characters from the main story so that they have their own arcs. Everything will flow into the main series, and then the main series will have a you know, major systemic change. And then after that that major shift, we've got plans for where we want the story world to go it gets weirder and more fun.
It's almost like, you know how Marvel and DC work with all these existing titles, or even some of the other, you know, like Image or Valiant was doing it too. How they have all these existing titles and then they, you know, come together once a year or whatever for a crossover event. That's almost what we're doing, but we're working backwards. So we had the main event and thought, oh, well, let's take this apart and do something with each one of these characters and see if we can build something.
And the great thing about that is we're not beholden to continuity the way that the you know, the Marvel universe or the DC universe has to, you know, where you're reading it and then it like a character will refer to something like, you know, Spider-Man will be like, oh, I forgot my socks. See Amazing Spider-Man number 38. And you're
right.
like,
right.
I don't have that issue. How am I going to get that?
Yeah, because what I take it as this is kind of like the storylines that I was used to reading when I read a lot of Vertigo comics.
Yeah,
where the storylines were a bit more realistic, and they kind of course brought a lot of reality to the forefront, like Road to Perdition or History of Violence, like those type of comic books that you had no type of superhero or any isms or any type of I'm gonna say oblong characters, however you may want to call it. They were just basically, it was it's a real good storyline with indubitably good characters, and it just made for an awesome story. And then when they got adapted, they turned into just like monster looking movies. Like if you've seen History of Violence on film, still a great movie. Nobody even knows it's a comic book. But in turn, this book, of course, encompasses characters like a Mayan god, an octoped, and human beings. How many genres would you say fit in this particular story?
Well, in this one, we're calling it a comedy heist, but there's definitely supernatural, horror, action,
comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's got a lot going on in it. I guess you could say that has a lot of subgenres. Genre theory is interesting too. Like I remember Alan Moore being like, if you really want to get fun with genre, learn the rules of genre, but then start mixing and matching things.
Mm-hmm.
So it like Everyday Magus very much is a cocktail of genre. It's got a lot of different things going on. Ultimately, it's told as a heist because not entirely unlike Ocean's 11, where it's like everything kind of happens asynchronous, and by the end of it, you see what the reveal was. Oh yeah, Danny Ocean had the key in his pocket the whole time and just walked in and got the thing.
Right.
Right. The whole like drilling under the hotel thing, that was just distraction for the audience. We're a little more faithful. We're not like such badly unreliable narrators, but I'm spiraling. This is me spiraling.
Oh, you're fine, man. I just want to throw out that you're not off base with the comparisons to Vertigo stuff. That Sean is a big fan of a lot of that stuff. I was not during the time they were in their like
In their heyday,
creative peak or whatever. But Sean has introduced me to a lot of that stuff after the fact, and so I am now a fan as well.
My favorite was the very early Hellblazer stuff, because like early Constantine is not a superhero. He's barely magical.
Yeah.
He's basically a guy who's like, holy shit, there's that thing happening. I should try and stop it because the power system that I'm subjected to is just permitting it to happen. So I should do something about it.
Yeah.
In fact, the very first, I got it around here, very first Hellblazer that I read, there's no magic in it at all. He just basically straps a guy to a chair and feeds a bunch of LSD to him, and then like makes him confess to murder, and then like that's it.
Yeah, right? I remember in those first volumes, like you could always see him like begging for help, and then coming to realize maybe like six issues in, yeah, I guess I got to do this shit myself. So then he just starts like learning more.
Yeah. Like the Family Man, right? The Family Man is a series in Hellblazer.
Yeah.
He basically gets into a fist fight with a serial killer and then shoots him. Like there's no magic in it. It's just like a detective story with a kind of sad ending. Like and there's something I love about that.
Definitely. Well, Kelly, Sean, I appreciate you guys doing this with me. I know this was a long time coming. We've been trying to get this together for like a couple of weeks, but I appreciate you guys doing this.
Appreciate you inviting us on, man. I really do.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Of course, man. So for everybody out there, the Facts Project, this is James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, Kelly DeCroix, and Sean Murphy. We are out.